Lost Island, survival in the unknown. The last thing Bianca remembered was the sound of thunder crashing over the ocean. The storm had been violent, shaking the ship like a toy in the hands of an angry child. Screams filled the night air, and then nothing. Darkness. Silence. When she woke up, the sky was an eerie shade of orange, the sun barely rising over the horizon. Her head throbbed, and her clothes were torn, soaked with salt water. The waves had mercilessly thrown her onto a deserted beach, the fine white sand clinging to her skin. She coughed, spitting out the taste of the sea, and struggled to sit up. Michael was lying a few feet away, motionless. Fear surged through Bianca's veins as she crawled toward him, pressing her fingers against his neck. Relief flooded her when she felt a faint pulse. "Michael," she whispered hoarsely, shaking his shoulders. He groaned and slowly opened his eyes. "Where? What happened?" "The ship," Bianca's voice trembled. "It went down." Michael sat up with a wince, his gaze scanning the beach. "Are we the only ones?" Bianca turned her head, searching for any other survivors. The only thing she saw was debris scattered along the shore, pieces of broken wood, luggage, and a single lifeboat, partially submerged in the shallow water. A horrifying realization sank in. They were alone. The island's secrets. Hours passed as they scavenged what little they could from the wreckage. A few bottles of water, a lighter, and a Swiss Army knife were their only tools. The island stretched before them like a lost paradise. Lush green trees, the sound of birds echoing through the jungle, and a towering mountain in the distance. "We need to find shelter," Michael said, gripping the knife. "And fresh water." Bianca nodded, but something in the jungle made her uneasy. It was too quiet. The only sound was the rustling of leaves in the breeze, but there was something else, something unseen, watching. As they walked deeper into the foliage, they stumbled upon a set of footprints. Bianca's heart pounded. "We're not alone." Michael knelt beside them, his brow furrowing. "These aren't ours." A distant scream cut through the silence. Adrenaline surged through their veins as they sprinted toward the sound. The jungle was dense, the thick vines tangling around their ankles. Finally, they broke into a small clearing where an old, abandoned village stood. The huts were made of wood and palm leaves, but they had clearly been left to decay. Bones were scattered across the ground, human skulls placed on spears as if to warn intruders. Bianca clutched Michael's arm, her breath shallow. "This isn't just any island," she whispered. "Something terrible happened here." The hunters. A rustling noise behind them made Bianca spin around. The shadows between the trees shifted. "Run!" Michael shouted, grabbing her hand. They sprinted toward the beach, but their pursuers were fast. Shapes moved between the trees, humanoid, but wrong. Their skin was painted with ash, their eyes wild and predatory. One of them let out a guttural cry, throwing a spear that narrowly missed Michael's head. Bianca yelped, stumbling as they broke free from the jungle. They ran along the shore until their lungs burned. Finally, they collapsed behind a large rock formation, gasping for air. Michael gritted his teeth. "We have to get off this island." Bianca nodded, fear making her dizzy. But how? They had no boat, no map, and no idea where they were. A rustling sound made them freeze. A man emerged from the jungle, his face smeared with dirt, his clothes torn like theirs. He raised his hands in surrender. "I'm not one of them," he said quickly. "My name is Daniel. I was on a plane that crashed here 6 months ago." Bianca exchanged a glance with Michael. 6 months? Daniel's expression was grim. "There's no way off this island. Not alive anyway." The escape plan. Daniel led them to a hidden cave where he had been surviving. It was stocked with supplies, coconut shells filled with fresh water, dried fish hanging from the ceiling, and a small fire pit. "I've tried everything," Daniel said, rubbing his temples. "The island is surrounded by deadly reefs. Any boat gets smashed before it can leave." Bianca sat beside the fire, hugging her knees. "There has to be a way." Michael clenched his fists. "Then we build something stronger, something that won't break." Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "Even if you manage that, there's still them." He motioned toward the jungle. "They don't let anyone leave." Bianca's blood ran cold. "Who are they?" Daniel exhaled. "The ones who came before us. Survivors who lost hope and turned into something else." The weight of his words settled in. This wasn't just about surviving. This was about escaping a nightmare. The three of them spent days gathering materials, constructing a raft from the strongest wood they could find. Every night, they took turns keeping watch, listening to the distant cries from the jungle. The final night before their escape, the sounds grew louder, closer. The hunters had discovered their plan, the final stand. They had no choice but to fight. Armed with sharpened sticks, rocks, and Daniel's makeshift bow, they stood their ground as the shadows emerged from the trees. The battle was brutal. Spears flew through the air, torches lit up the night. Bianca swung a burning branch, setting one of their attackers' clothing ablaze. Michael tackled another, his knife flashing in the firelight. Daniel loosed arrows with deadly precision. By dawn, the sand was stained with blood, but they were still standing. They pushed the raft into the water, adrenaline fueling their final steps. As the tide carried them away, Bianca glanced back at the island. The figures stood at the shore, watching, waiting. "We made it," Michael whispered, gripping Bianca's hand. She exhaled, finally allowing herself to believe. But the ocean was vast, and the unknown still stretched before them. Their adventure wasn't over. It had only just begun. Survival vocabulary, 5 essential words from Lost Island with meanings and examples. 1. Adrenaline, noun. Meaning, a hormone released in response to stress or excitement, causing increased heart rate and energy levels. Example sentence. As they ran through the jungle, adrenaline surged through Bianca's veins, making her heart pound. 2. Debris, meaning, scattered fragments, usually from something destroyed. Example sentence. After the shipwreck, pieces of debris floated on the water and washed up on the shore. 3. Pursuer, noun, meaning, a person or thing that is chasing someone or something. Example sentence. Michael and Bianca ran as fast as they could, knowing their pursuers were close behind. 4. Rustling, noun verb, meaning, a soft crackling sound made by movement, especially of leaves or fabric. Example sentence. The rustling of leaves behind them made Bianca freeze in fear. Someone was watching them. 5. Abandoned, adjective, meaning, left empty, deserted, or no longer used. Example sentence. They discovered an abandoned village in the jungle, with broken huts and scattered bones. Lost Island, test your knowledge. 5 questions and answers about the adventure. 1. Question. What caused Bianca and Michael to end up on the island? Answer. A violent storm caused their ship to sink, and they were washed ashore on a mysterious island. 2. Question. What was the first sign that Bianca and Michael were not alone on the island? Answer. They discovered unfamiliar footprints in the jungle, indicating that someone else was there. 3. Question. Who was Daniel, and how long had he been on the island? Answer. Daniel was a plane crash survivor who had been trapped on the island for 6 months. 4. Question. What was the biggest danger Bianca and Michael faced on the island? Answer. The island was home to dangerous hunters, former survivors who had turned into ruthless predators. 5. Question. How did Bianca, Michael, and Daniel attempt to escape the island? Answer. They built a strong raft and fought off the hunters before pushing into the ocean in search of rescue. The Mysterious Canyon, a tale of survival and secrets. The blazing sun hung high over the desolate landscape, casting long shadows over jagged rocks and dry earth. The desert stretched endlessly, whispering tales of ancient secrets buried beneath layers of dust and stone. Linda wiped the sweat from her brow, her piercing green eyes scanning the horizon with determination. She had always been drawn to the unknown, to places that whispered promises of mystery and adventure. And today, that call had led her here, to the edge of a canyon that didn't exist on any map. Peter adjusted his backpack, the weight of their supplies pressing down on his shoulders. His rugged features were hardened by years of outdoor expeditions, but nothing he had experienced before compared to the eerie allure of this place. The canyon yawned before them, its depths shrouded in shadows, its walls carved with strange markings that defied explanation. "Are you sure about this, Linda?" Peter's voice was a low rumble, tinged with both excitement and caution. Linda flashed a daring smile. "When have I ever been unsure about an adventure?" With that, they descended into the unknown. The narrow path twisted and turned, forcing them to squeeze through crevices barely wide enough to accommodate their bodies. The air grew cooler, the sounds of the outside world fading into an oppressive silence. As they ventured deeper, the canyon walls seemed to close in, adorned with ancient petroglyphs that depicted scenes of strange rituals and creatures unlike anything they'd ever seen. Hours passed, marked only by the dwindling light and the growing sense of unease that settled over them. Suddenly, Linda stumbled upon something extraordinary, an entrance carved into the rock, hidden behind a cascade of ivy. Without hesitation, she pushed the foliage aside and stepped through, Peter close behind. They found themselves in a vast underground chamber, illuminated by beams of sunlight piercing through cracks in the ceiling. The walls shimmered with mineral deposits, and in the center of the room stood a colossal stone structure, resembling an ancient altar. Strange artifacts lay scattered around, remnants of a civilization lost to time. Peter approached the altar, his fingers tracing the intricate carvings. "This is incredible. But what is it?" Before Linda could respond, the ground trembled beneath their feet. A deep, guttural roar echoed through the chamber, and shadows shifted unnaturally along the walls. They weren't alone. Out of the darkness emerged creatures unlike any they had ever seen, lithe, with elongated limbs and glowing eyes that reflected an otherworldly intelligence. The creatures moved with terrifying speed, surrounding them in an instant. Adrenaline surged through Linda's veins. She grabbed Peter's hand, pulling him toward a narrow passage on the other side of the chamber. They sprinted through the dark, their footsteps echoing as the creatures pursued them relentlessly. The passage led to a labyrinth of tunnels, each turn a desperate gamble for survival. They navigated by instinct, driven by sheer will and the primal urge to escape. The creatures were relentless, their screeches reverberating through the stone corridors. After what felt like an eternity, they burst into an open cavern. A river of luminescent water flowed through it, casting an eerie glow that revealed yet more ancient structures, bridges, statues, and towering obelisks inscribed with symbols that seemed to pulse with life. "We have to keep moving," Peter shouted, dragging Linda toward a narrow bridge that spanned the river. As they crossed, the creatures closed in. Peter fought them off with a makeshift torch, the flames casting monstrous shadows on the cavern walls. Linda spotted an ancient lever embedded in one of the obelisks. Without thinking, she pulled it. The ground shook violently. The bridge collapsed, taking the creatures with it into the churning waters below. Linda and Peter barely managed to cling to the edge, pulling themselves to safety as the cavern settled into an uneasy silence. Breathing heavily, they realized they had survived, but the canyon had not yet revealed all its secrets. The lever had triggered something. A hidden passage slowly opened before them, its depths promising more mysteries and dangers. Peter looked at Linda, his eyes filled with both fear and exhilaration. "Ready for the next part of the adventure?" Linda smiled, her spirit unbroken. "Always." And with that, they stepped into the darkness, unaware that their greatest challenge was still to come. The canyon was alive, and it had only just begun to play its hand.